Welcome to Shaping the Basin, the podcast where we dive into the stories of the people shaping the Klamath Basin. From bold leaders to relentless problem solvers, we're talking to the change makers who aren't just dreaming big but making things happen. I'm Heather Harder, and in each episode we'll explore the traits, challenges, and moments that define leadership. Without the fluff, without the sales pitch, just real conversations about what it takes to build something that lasts and make a difference. I want to thank our sponsor, Running Y Resort. And with that, we'll get started. I am here today with Bob Kingzett. Bob is currently serving on the Oregon Tech Board. He's currently raising money for a field house.
Board. Gotta be clear
the foundation board. Thank you. The Oregon Tech Foundation
They have a governing board also.
Oh, good. Not the governing. You're part of the Fun Foundation Board.
Yep, that's right.
You're helping raise money for a field house for the indoor training facility up there.
Correct.
Working on some fundraising for some bronze statues. And for 38 years, you served with the Wentz and the Jeld-Wen Foundation. So thank you for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me very much.
Yeah.
Nice to be on the podcast.
I thought of you. You know, you and I met before I started at the chamber. I don't know if you remember. We got stuck in Portland.
Yes.
Fog wouldn't allow us to fly in, and we went and had coffee at a Sherry's. Do you remember that?
We did that. We drove down to Sherry's because we had rental cars.
That's true. So anyway, thank you. You've been involved in so many community projects. When someone asks, what do you do? How would you answer that?
Well, first, congrats on your podcast.
Thank you.
As soon as you surpass Joe Rogan with your audience group, you may have to have another career. But anyway, I think it's cool you're doing this.
Thank you.
Well, I've had such a blessing and opportunity to work on projects from so many angles, creating projects, raising money for projects, developing them, implementing them, and then seeing them come to fruition. And so that's really quite a blessing. And a lot of that was working with Jeld-Wen and the Wentz. And we were very unusual in that oftentimes as a foundation, we would help conceive of a project. We would be an early funder, lead funder often, and then I would be tasked to help Team Went to raise funds for a project, and no foundations do that. So that was kind of a unique way of doing things that we did. And of course, when the Jeld-Wen Foundation was up and running full tilt, we were in over 20 states across the country.
I didn't realize that.
And very significant contributions to the Klamath Basin over the years.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. What originally drew you to philanthropy? I know earlier we talked and you had some event planning and you had some experience before Jeld-Wen Foundation, but what drew you to philanthropy and community work?
Well, I guess I've always just viewed myself as having a personal responsibility to participate in making communities and local projects better. And so it's just kind of a natural extension of all of that.
Mm-hmm. Was there a defining moment or experience early on in your career that was a highlight?
Boy, there's a lot of them. Different projects and different moments when you do your ribbon cutting, like for the Sanford Clinic, which we raised the dollars for that in Klamath, and see such a great pediatric clinic in Klamath Falls, and really the only Sanford clinic of its type on the West Coast. That was, really a neat moment, and seeing the gospel mission come together with that team that we helped raise the funds there, and having that come to fruition and helping so many people of need through the community. Those are moments that are really inspiring because you see something that you worked hard on come to fruition.
Absolutely. One thing that I've always appreciated about you, I'm sure, how do I want to say this? I'm sure you've been told no a lot more than you've been told yes, although you've been very successful. So relentless comes to mind when I think of you. Where does that drive come from?
The greatest statement, and it was from a gentleman, good friend that just passed away at 104 3/4, is he said, you need to have a tenacity of purpose. And I've always liked that. And I think you got to have a laser sharp focus to do things, see the big picture, but you've also got to be tenacious about persevering when you are shut down temporarily or you don't get some of the funds that you need. You can't just turn and walk away.
Mm-hmm. Can you how do you have any tips for developing that tenacity? How did you do
Well,
it? Were you born with it or?
I think partially you're either born with part of that or not. If you
Mhm.
don't have it, that's going to be kind of troubling. But
True.
you develop confidence in yourself as you grow and learn. And one thing that I would definitely say, and you do it a lot, and I know just in being around you, mentoring others is such a key in helping to make things happen. And there was a really good engineering dinner last week that I went to, and I'm standing in the food line across the way, and just, I guess, naturally me, I started engaging a freshman student, and
Mhm.
telling her that she needed to work early. She's early on. And I said, make sure you get some internships and
Mhm.
experience, because that gives you credit for your resume. Also, you may get a job with them. And that's just what popped out of me in that night. And that's the kind of thing that you grow. I had fantastic mentors with Geldwin, some of the
Mhm.
finest men and women that I've met in my entire life. And so that was extremely helpful.
Mhm. Um, Thinking back at all the projects you've worked on, can you think of one of the biggest obstacles and how you worked through that?
Well, every project has different obstacles, and that's why you have to be adept, and you got to be able to dance down the sidelines without falling out of bounds, if you
Mhm.
will. So, and the challenges are all different. I've had participation in $40 million building capital asset projects that went easier than some projects that were $500,000 or less. And sometimes what you buy doesn't always work the way you want it to. And so those are some of your challenges, and you just have to adapt to that.
Said I'm all about it. Yeah, I'm all about it. Said I'm all about it. Yeah, 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 yeah. Said I'm all about it. Yeah, I'm all about it. Said I'm all about it. Yeah, 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 yeah.
You probably have to have some solving skills on the fly or some ways of creative thinking when somebody's telling you no. Did you have to do that often?
Well, you have to have plan A, B, and C. And in other words, when you make, and you have to really, just like you prep for a speech or prep for anything, you have to prep for how you're going to pitch a project and know what the pushbacks will be from certain people and situations, so that you can add more convincing pieces to make it work.
Mhm. Because we worked together on a lot of stuff over the years, one thing that always stuck out to me was you did a lot of planning. You didn't leave anything to chance. You knew how to strategically meet with people ahead of time, pitch some ideas. You were really good at getting champions ahead of time. Does that?
Well, but you never know when something reach out and bite your backside. My favorite story, not then, was when I was at Oregon Tech. I was student activities director. We had a $1,500 classical pianist from Argentina, and everything was set, everything was happening. He was banging away on the piano, doing a great job. But the janitor had moved the chalks, and nobody would even anticipate that. So the piano goes moving across the floor,
Oh gosh.
and that's not what you want. So you have to be ready for unintended circumstances and deal with those as they happen too. And then later on, you can laugh about something like that.
Mm-hmm. Um, that's funny. I feel like there's a quote there. I feel like that could be some kind of quote about your piano moving across the floor. Back to that, you're really great at getting people to buy into your ideas. Do you have a secret that you could share with getting people to buy in?
Well, it's really just selling your personal conviction for the project. And if you're not convicted for it, you shouldn't be involved in it.
That's valid.
So that's really the key is, be knowledgeable and really study what the assets are that you're bringing forward with a given project, so that, because people will ask you some tough questions and you're going to need to be able to answer those.
Mm-hmm. What about skeptics? When you go to somebody, you obviously have your conviction, but how do you try to get the skeptics on board?
Well, the best way, you can't always do this, but the best way early in a project development is to get your toughest person involved in a way that they think that they were part of creating the project. Because
Mm,
if they feel like they have part of the turf, then they're much more likely to be supportive.
mm-hmm. How much time do you spend before actual kickoff working on it? Like there's the part where you go and ask for the money for the project or the
Right.
support for the project. But I imagine that's not the first piece you're working on.
No, what you've got to become knowledgeable about things that you have no knowledge about. And that's the key. And so you've got to work with the company that is selling you the product or building the contractor, building the building. And you've got to ask all of those anticipatory questions so that when things do fall apart a little bit, that you know how to deal with that.
Mm-hmm. Looking back, is there a lesson you learned the hard way?
Yeah, it's really important to know the quality of the company you're dealing with and what happens if what you've been promised doesn't really deliver and work.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got to decide how to solve it and negotiate. You've got to be a tough negotiator if something is the fault of the company providing the product, the installation, whatever the problem comes from. And so those are things you just have to be ready for and adept to and not be afraid to stand up for what your rights are and what you should get.
Mm-hmm. If you thinking about the people watching that maybe have a project in mind or something they've been sitting on that they want to make happen, if you could give advice to someone trying to make a difference in this community, what would your advice be?
Well, talk to people that have significant experience in doing things like that. And, I really enjoy the mentoring part. Some folks at Lost River did a magnificent job building a community center down there. And they asked for me just to give some counseling, and they were very appreciative of that. I don't know how much it really helped, but tried to help with that. And that's what, when you get gray hair like me, people think that you may know something. It may or may not be true, but they think you might know something. And so be available. It doesn't take 100 hours to give people some counseling about how they should approach. Because in Oregon, for example, when you're doing a big project, it's important to get connected with all the Oregon foundations.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have really good strength with that because all of our foundations work together. And when we did the chalkboard project, K-12 education reform, all of Oregon's foundation leaders were on that. And it really helped develop relationships that helped projects in communities all across the state, including Klamath Basin.
Right. Relationships I think are probably a
Yes.
huge part of your success, correct?
Had a favorite United Way director years ago. Our last one was great. But United Way director some 30 plus years ago. And he said, Bob, people give to people as much or more than they give to causes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really true. So it's the relationship person. When you're fundraising, make sure that you connect people who are going to ask with the people with the strongest relationships.
I love that. I love that. We are going to wrap up, but I have 3 kind of hot seat questions. These are supposed
Okay.
to be quick.
All right.
All right. If you had to describe your leadership style as a movie or TV character, who would it be?
I have no clue. I don't know. That's a good question, but I'm not sure.
Did I stump you?
It
Think about it for a
It wouldn't
minute.
be Clint Eastwood. How's that?
It would not be.
Although he's a very bright guy, actually.
Maybe Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
All right. What's a book, podcast, or person that has deeply influenced you?
I haven't done that much podcaster listening to, so I'm going to be devoted to yours. How's that?
I appreciate that. Thank you. And then I think this one will be easy for you. If I handed you $250,000 right now and you had to use it to make an impact in the community by the end of the day, what would you do with it?
Because of my current background and affinity, I would probably tie it into a project with Oregon Tech.
Mm-hmm.
We're blessed right now. This is a little aside from the question, but we're blessed to have the 2 best presidents we've ever had at Oregon Tech and KCC. And so doing projects with them in the community is a tremendous building asset. But everybody has great projects. KC is doing marvelous stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Klamath is on the roll, doing great things. And I think we can only look forward to a better and stronger town. And I've been blessed to be a small part of that.
I'm gonna give you an opportunity to end on one thing that you say to me all the time. There's something you say about Klamath and our world-class facilities. You want to end with that because you
My
just
Chamber of Commerce speech.
I
can
know,
do it
so
in less
say
than
it.
30 seconds.
do it.
Klamath has more world-class facilities and programs of a wide diversity, recreation, education, culture, healthcare than any small town in Oregon. And I think we have more than all of small Oregon put together.
Fantastic.
But we don't think of ourselves that way. We don't have to build the big facilities. We just have to add the little pieces that top them off and help revenue streams and help strengthen all of them.
I love that. Thank you for everything you've done. Thanks for being my guest today. Thank you to the Running Y for sponsoring this episode. And if you enjoyed the show, go give us a like, subscribe, and watch for the next episode.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.